Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
So, I'm an elevator technician. When they break, I'm the one who fixes them. When parts wear out, I replace them. You get it. The other day, I was on a job replacing a worn-out emergency light. Back in the day, it was a habit to use the battery of the emergency light to power the elevator's siren system. Modern emergency lights have different voltages, being LED, so I can't use the old way of connecting everything. So I have to wire everything up from scratch, including new battery and siren. No big deal, but it takes a little longer to complete the task. Note that this is a 3-stop elevator, ground floor, first and second. I start with hanging up all my out-of-order signs and start working on the ground floor. 5 minutes in, just disassemble the old piece. The story begins. In comes the entitled woman. Mid-40s, can walk perfectly fine, carrying one barely filled grocery bag. The story includes me, the entitled woman, and her lovely daughter, around 15 years old. "Excuse me, is the elevator broken again?" she asks. "Not exactly, ma'am. I'm changing this," showing her the new emergency light, because the old one wasn't working anymore. This will probably take about an hour to complete. At this point, her daughter walks in. "How am I supposed to get my groceries upstairs?" Me, getting annoyed, I look at her bag and give her the "Are you kidding me" look. "Mom, seriously, take the stairs, it's just 2 floors. Her daughter says, clearly annoyed. "No, I pay for this elevator, and I need it now." Her daughter sighs and says, "I'm going up," and she takes the stairs. "How long is this going to take?" "Like I said, ma'am, about an hour." The woman then sits down on a bench in the hallway waiting for me to finish. "Really? Oh well, I do my thing in the cabin, not hurrying at all. Mount the new E-light to the ceiling and pack my things to go 1 floor up to start the wiring on the top of the cabin." "You done yet?" "No ma'am, I still have to wire things up on top of the elevator." "No, I can see you're done. You're packing your things." "Yes, I have to take my bag 1 floor up so I can start on the wiring." "Can't I use it now?" "No ma'am, you can't. There is exposed wiring up there. If you use it now, you can cause a short and you'll get stuck. It's really not safe." Fine." And she sits back down on a bench, seriously pissed off. I take my bag and make my way upstairs. As soon as I stood in front of the first floor door, I heard the door on the ground floor close. And sure enough, Karen, the entitled woman, went into the elevator and tried to take it upstairs. Hell no, I wasn't having that. I take my emergency key, and as soon as the elevator starts moving, I open the lock, cutting the safety chain, and the elevator comes to a sudden stop. This scared her, and she screams. I open the door, and in my most fake surprised voice I yell, "Oh no, what have you done?" While calmly pressing the emergency stop on top of the floor. "Yep, this thing isn't going anywhere soon," I say. "This is exactly why I said the elevator is unsafe to use now. I'll do my best to get it working again ASAP, but you made a mess up here, so I don't know how long it's gonna take." There was no mess, but I couldn't resist teaching her a little lesson. The entitled woman swears, yells, and makes a scene. "I'll be right back. I have to go to the engine room to see if I can get it working again." I close the door and make my way up. On the 2nd floor, the daughter came out of the apartment because of the yelling of her mother, and I quickly explained what happened. The daughter raising her voice, "Oh no, please get her out of there." But then she comes closer and whispers to me, "Don't hurry, make her suffer." That's my kind of girl. Music to my ears, I smile, give her a thumbs up, and make my way up to the engine room. I call my supervisor to explain the situation in case she files a complaint. In the engine room, I start playing around with the fuses, putting her in the dark, because yeah, I haven't connected the E-light yet. I play with her for about half an hour before I turn off the emergency stop I activated. The elevator synchronizes to the lowest floor, and I wait for the doors to open. "Please, don't ever do that again," I tell her. The entitled woman, white as a sheet, shaking, "No, I won't." And she takes the stairs and goes inside. I never heard from her again. I calmly finish my job and leave the building with a smile on my face. Mission accomplished. Idiot. Some people are having concerns about safety. I made sure there never was any risk. It was intentional that the elevator was able to move because I needed it to. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to access the car top because of the distance between the floors. I tested all safeties I was going to need before I started the work. I disconnected the old light, which was conveniently with a plug. When I tested said car top safeties, so there never were exposed live wires. When I plugged the door with my bag, I never left the site. On every floor, the out-of-order tag was placed over the floor call buttons. And the reason why I initially started working on the ground floor is so people who enter the building can clearly see me working when the elevator was still active. The moment when I started working on a car top and people couldn't see me when entering the building, I did make use of the stop button, which I already tested, to prevent the elevator from reacting to calls. Every action I took was well thought out, potential risks were considered, and actions were taken to eliminate them. If I really needed that elevator to stay where it was, I would make sure it would. And the only people I've seen during that entire time I've been there were the two mentioned in this story. No, there never was any risk of anybody getting hurt. Hi everybody, so this is a bit of background on me. I don't have Tourette's, however I do tick, twitch, and fidget a lot due to my mental health disorders. Borderline personality disorder being the main contributor to my tics, and I have gotten used to it. Much therapy, much meds. But when I'm in a public place, I tend to be more stressed out, since this was when I didn't have my service dog at the time. Reminder that I was and still am a minor. Also, this is one of my first times posting, so please be nice. So this day was just an ordinary day and I was out in my local mall to buy a present for one of my friends. Now, I had already had encounters with entitled people about my piercings, scaring the kids, me being out in slight cosplay with friends because I do that, and so on. Now, I thought today wasn't going to have any sort of encounters because COVID in my area was nuts. But boy, was I wrong. I was waiting in line in front of an older woman in the store I was in. Hint, very large bookstore that starts with a bar and ends with a blee. And I had a selection of some of my favorite books and a present for my friend. I was having slight trouble holding the books since the store was a bit crowded and it was around the time I ate, so I was a bit hungry. And I do get a bit more stressed when hungry. So in that sense, my arm was jolting slightly along with my fingers. My head jolting to the side slightly as well. These are very common. I hardly verbally tick, so it's usually physical movements. My main strategy is to curl my toes, which does help somewhat, but I still had to set my books to the side to readjust it in my more secure arm. This woman approached me asking if I needed any help, to which I cleared my throat to decline. She asked me if I had some form of Tourette's, in which I shook my head no, which normally would result in an "oh, then what's wrong?" in a polite manner. But again, I was so wrong. She full-on did this very angry huff before saying, "Then why are you faking this? Is it for attention or something? Do you want people to feel bad for you?" Which caught me so off guard. The following conversation went something like this. "I'm sorry? You heard me. Why are you faking your tics then?" "Ma'am, that's really not something I prefer to tell an absolute stranger." "Well, tell me anyway. You're a part of the problem for faking disabilities." Me staring at this woman. I am not faking. But then she pulled her mask down. "Did you just talk back to me? My daughter has Tourette's. I've done my research." "I understand your daughter has Tourette's. However, I just want to buy my books and go home as fast as possible. Also, please pull up your mask." "Don't tell me what to do. I need proof that you aren't faking this." Me, visibly uncomfortable and backing away from her. "Ma'am, please, I just want to buy my books." The cashier who wasn't there before. "Next person I can help." I quickly rushed over with my books to check out, pulling my wallet out with my still shaking hand. The cashier gave me a smile under his mask as he scanned my books. The woman was rushing over to yell at me, snatching my wallet right out of my hand before going through it, snatching my ID out of it as well. I was in shock, so I stood there and just stared in utter shock at this woman rummage through my stuff. Thankfully, I snapped out of it and took it back as a cashier yelled at her, since I had to show a photo ID for my card and saw I was a minor. At this point, I was on the verge of tears and ready to call my mom to come pick me up to take me home instead of me riding the city transit. I kinda blanked out for the rest of the encounter, but I do remember getting a free book and the woman being taken away by security. Sorry, this wasn't really that interesting, but I do remember getting home safely. That same month, we got my bestest friend, also known as my service dog, Baz. I was a kid back in the 80s, 2 years out of college, when I moved into an apartment by the shore in New Jersey. When the cold weather arrived, there was always a few days when the apartment was cold. We would tell the super, and then the heat would start arriving. One year, the heat started decreasing in February, and inside the apartment was like in the 50s, and we had to start wearing coats. We told the super about it, and nothing happened this time. We wrote the landlord about it, and still nothing. So we checked with an attorney and learned about the warranty of habitability and withholding of rents. So yet another certified letter to the landlord, and we start withholding rents. He files a motion to evict us, so we answer with the marine defense, depositing the withheld money with the court. The judge finds in our favor for all the money withheld. We continue to live there because there just aren't many other options, as we save for a home. Flash forward to living there for 6 years on a last lease. Because we are about to buy a home, we write in a clause that we can break the lease with 45 days notice in writing, similar to his 45-day clause. They do not notice it because it's slightly obscured on the top left of page 2, so they sign off on it and return it to me. So in the middle of the lease, we give the 45-day written notice, make the rent payments, and leave. They don't return our deposit, so we sue for it, demanding double. They sue us for the remainder of the 6 months rent and refuse to return our security deposit. This is no longer a small claims court, but we proceed without an attorney anyway. They are expensive. We arrive at the courthouse, and the court forces a round of arbitration. The arbitrator says we will lose in front of the judge and to pay the rent remainder. We refuse and wait for the judge. While waiting, the landlord's attorney drops by and asks why we didn't take the arbitrator's advice. So we tell him about the clause we wrote in, and he states he saw it too, and that since it was crossed out, it's not part of the deal. We show him our copy of the lease where it's not crossed out, and his face goes white as a sheet. He makes a call to the landlord, who then offers to properly break the lease with no penalty and return our security deposit in full. We refuse. And we show him the certified letter stating that we would have accepted that deal up until yesterday, but that if you force us to come down to court, we want double damages of the improper withholding of the security deposit. He tries again to reach out to the landlord, but no luck this time. We go to see the judge, he looks at both leases and calls their attorney to the bench. The judge takes our lease and thrusts it towards their attorney and says, "This is a lease in force." Their attorney starts walking around the courtroom like a chick with his head cut off, while I try to laugh as quietly as possible. The judge fines for us for double damages. We receive nothing for a week, and I go back to the courthouse where the clerk says they should pay that judgment immediately and tell us about chattel execution, and gives us that form. A couple of weeks pass and a check appears from the landlord. Another month passes and we get a call from the court. They have our money. I told him the landlord had sent a check a while back, so all was good. She tells us that we should have informed the court that we got the money to stop the chattel execution from occurring. The court sent the sheriff to their offices and confiscated office equipment and sold it at auction to satisfy the judgment. They said don't worry, they will just return the money to the landlord. That's the revenge. Getting the money and having them experience the abrupt seizing of their assets at their place of business. Having it sold at auction and then having the money returned to them. Major pro-justice. I'm a 16-year-old female and this is my story. It all started one day when me and my friends decided to go to a bowling alley to have some fun. I went and asked for my mother's permission and she told me sure, but asked me if it's okay to take my little sister with me. She's 12 and doesn't really have a lot of friends. I have no problem with that, to be honest. I have a really good relationship with my little sis and I don't mind keeping an eye on her for a couple of hours. She's a polite kid and doesn't stir troubles to start with anyways. On a Sunday night, we met up at the bowling alley and we started our night with some fresh drinks, mostly juices and smoothies. Then we started changing our shoes and stuff. I found my sister a pair of shoes her size, took her in my team, and we started having some fun. Let's just say that she was not really strong enough to fully push a bowling ball to the end of the aisle, but she was trying nonetheless. Her desperate tries to do so were really cute and all of us were pretty much cheering for her. After around 15 minutes or so, it was my little sister's turn to swing the ball one more time. So she went up to the ball stand, waited for a proper ball she could hold in her tiny hands until a pink ball popped up right in front of her. She was really excited that she got a ball with her favorite color that was compatible with her little fingers. We started cheering for her to throw the ball. She got excited, but before she could release it, a wild Karen with an extremely blinding blonde hair appeared right behind her and stopped her from releasing the ball by fully grabbing it with both hands. It got silent for a brief moment because no one really understood what was happening. Then I snapped back to reality and asked her, "Hey, what are you doing?" She glared at me intensely as if I killed her dog. Then she yelled, "That's my baby's ball! How dare you take it from him?" "What do you mean your baby's ball? Isn't this ball owned by the center? Or did you bring it along with you?" You know, some people bring their bowling balls with them to the center and that's okay. So at first I thought that was the case and would have understood if that's it. Would have been upset because what she did still wasn't alright, but I get it. But then she answered, "No, we don't really own the ball, but as long as we're here, he likes to play with this specific one, the pink one." Your kid likes pink balls? Wait, it's not actually yours? What is this nonsense? You could have injured my little sister with that move you pulled. And now you're telling me that you don't actually own the ball? What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? Can't you see that I have a champion in the making here? My little child is going to be a world champion one day. And it all starts with this pink ball. It's for luck, and plus, that's his favorite color. You know what? No. You're gonna hand us that ball back, and my sister is going to throw it like she was supposed to. And then you could use it till the ball ends up popping up in your stand. Which is another crazy point I should have made, since if things went correctly, their balls shouldn't have popped up on our stand to start with. Which makes me wonder if she was lying about it or just confused. Of course, she refuses to hand it over, but I was not really going to take this nonsense and walk away. If she would have asked nicely in the first place, then that would have been a completely different story. But snatching the ball the way she did from my little weak sister wasn't okay with me. You're not gonna endanger my little sister on my watch. I was definitely fully indulged in the mama bear mode right now. I place my hands on the ball she's grabbing, lock them well, give it a good pull and snatch it from her grip. And she absolutely loses it and charges at me. But my friends stand between me and her, trying to block her from reaching me. Most of them were trying to de-escalate the situation because it seemed like it was getting out of hand at this point. When she sees that she can't get through and it appears she looked and noticed a couple of employees rushing towards us, since at this point people were looking and our voices were really causing a commotion, she did the unthinkable. She grabbed the ball from the stand, locked her crazy eyes with mine and screamed, "Well, if you think that your little brat of a sister is more important than my boy, allow me to show her my support." Then she throws the ball that was in her hand right at my little sister. The ball strikes one of my friend's legs, but sadly it did end up hitting my sister's chest area. We all stood right there in shock for a second, then as I realized what happened, I lost it. Especially when I saw my sister falling to the floor. I went to pick her up and see how she is while screaming like a mad person. People around started calling 911 after pretty much everyone saw her attack a little girl intentionally. Security guards rushed to the scene and detained the woman. After a couple of my friends went ballistic on her when they saw what she did. One guard came and stood right next to me and tried to see if he could help with my sister, who was now holding her chest and finding it extremely hard to breathe. In a few minutes, paramedics took over, and after assessing the situation, they suspected a broken rib. Took my sis in their ambulance, and I rode with her. And another ambulance took my other friend that got hit in the leg earlier. Needless to say, the cops arrested the woman, who didn't really seem regretting what she did, judging from the crazy crap she was screaming while she was getting detained and arrested. I called our mom on the way to the hospital, and she arrived shortly after we got there. Thankfully, there were no ribs broken when the scan results came back, but she had a nasty bruise due to the heavy ball impact in her weak chest. Clearly, the woman was charged with a nasty list of charges, including assault on a minor and attempted murder, plus some additional charges she picked from attacking my friend and the security guards when they were trying to detain her. 15 years in prison was what the judge ended up serving her. I am not familiar with what happened to her kid, to be honest, as that was not a part that interested me much in this whole saga. For all I know, he's better off without this monster in his life either way. Sister ended up making a full physical recovery, but sadly, still working on getting outside without being, well, afraid. I really hope this horrific woman rots in her jail cell. I had a boss who told me not to tell him how to put a computer together because he already knows how and I don't need your unsolicited advice. Okay, strap yourselves in for the background. I'm a woman in the tech industry. Do you already see where this is going? Not only was I a tech at this place, I was the tech, the one who trained 80% of the techs, had the highest numbers in districts and top 10 in the territory. But I always went by my last name, so everyone who wasn't physically in my store thought I was a male. Due to circumstances, we ended up getting a new manager from another store out of state. His first day was on my day off. My coworkers told me he wanted 2 hours with each of us to learn our thoughts on diagnosing issues, and he was really eager to learn from us. He was especially interested to learn from the top tech who he heard about in his previous store, until he learned that I was a woman. He did 2-hour sessions with all the other techs but me. He always went to the male techs with questions. He tried to make me work the counter to just check computers in when I was one of the only 3 full-time repair techs, and we had 7 counter techs. He tried to make me do his paperwork on several occasions. He also started trying to repair computers by himself, even though that was not his job. He would leave computers half repaired with no notes, then write up whatever tech he thought should pick it up where I left off A. Then write up whatever tech he thought should pick it up where I left off. Jerk. The whole team hated him and started making remarks of, well, OP could fix this if you asked her. Or, I think OP fixed something similar in an hour and you've been at this for 2 days. And other phrases to piss him off that a woman knew more than him. This was a perfect setup to one of my favorite moments of my career. Manager got it in his head that he was going to do something to prove he knew his stuff, so when a customer came in wanting a custom-built computer, which we weren't supposed to do, he grabbed the opportunity. He helped the guy pick out the parts, compare prices, and sold him the labor to put it all together. He also told me he was going to build it in my repair space, and he was doing this alone. And I will never forget this. Don't tell me how to do this. Let me learn. Oh, I will. Cue the manager putting this machine together on a bench behind me, while I continued my work, just waiting. Manager has it together, hits the power switch, and the computer turns on, then off, then on, then off. He unplugs, then takes it apart, then together again. Same result. I can hear the wheels turning behind me, but he told me not to give him advice, so I keep working with my mouth shut. Let him ask me when he's good and ready. He then believes parts must be bad, so he has a customer send parts back, wait for the new ones, then try again. Same result. This continues for 2 months. He has a customer who's obviously very angry at this point, send every single part back, and have a whole new set of parts delivered. He has promised the customer this is the last time. This time it'll work. He definitely knows what he's doing. The day arrives where the customer brings in the parts, the manager is there, and I'm there. I stop repairing computers as he puts the final parts in, and I lean against my bench to watch what is about to happen. How could I not? He hits the power and gets the same result. He is furious. He throws a screwdriver across the bench, denting the wall, and curses so loudly I am sure a customer heard. He puts his hand on either side of the machine, head down, shoulders slump, utterly defeated. In a quiet, oh so quiet voice he asks, "Opie, what's wrong with it?" Me? Well, the motherboard and process are incompatible without a BIOS update. And how long have you known this? Since you first turned it on 2 months ago. He turns, and he's red in the face, veins are bulging, and I'm pretty sure he thought about decking me for a second before composing himself with a very, very deep breath. Why didn't you say anything then? Me, smiling sweetly, because you told me not to, and to let you learn. So, have you learned? He stormed off and out of the store. He ended up taking 2 personal days, and I ended up building a new PC that actually worked. The customer was cool once I explained everything and even showed them how I cable managed to allow the best cooling and looks was their clear case. It's a story that ended up being the legendary story to tell all new techs. I left the company a few months later for a higher paying jobs, and that manager ended up getting fired due to my GM believing him to be the reason for my leaving. I never corrected that perspective. After all, how else will he learn? I was building an online training module at work that is intended to teach existing users how to work a new process. It has interactive elements, quizzes, segments to work through, a few sample scenarios and so on. Now it recently got a new associate director who, from what I can tell, advanced through the company by throwing other people under the bus. She gets promoted not for her own merit, but because at the end of the day she has less mud sticking to her than other applicants. It is uncanny to the point that there simply had to be more to it than stupid office politics. I'll get to that in a bit. So after I had the first drafts of the module done, it gets sent out to the usual round of testing. And there are of course a couple of things that need to be corrected. I build the module off the notes the subject matter experts leave me, and a few things inevitably get lost in translation. But this new associate director just rips it to shreds, complaining that it's completely incomprehensible, needs to go into much greater detail, asking questions about nearly every individual mouse click in the sample scenarios, and overall stating that it is impossible to follow. The thing is, this module is intended for our finance department, for people who have a background in finance and have already been trained on how to use our internal software. She is a training services associate director who has a teaching background. The module isn't supposed to make sense to a former middle school social studies teacher. It is supposed to make sense to people with finance degrees. I push back and try explaining this to her in a million different ways, but she's having none of it. So I have to go back to the subject matter experts with her 20 pages worth of criticism. And at first they think I'm joking. I had to forward her email before they finally believed me. So for the next 2 weeks we're going over every nuance, including readdressing everything that was covered during their 3-week classroom training. How to set up their network drives, how to set up Outlook, including things as nuanced as, if you don't know how to set up your email signature, click here. I mean really basic. Basic stuff that has nothing to do with what the module was originally supposed to teach. But I now had to include it all because our new associate director couldn't find the on switch if you stapled her finger to it. This wastes my time, the subject matter expert's time, and time spent re-recording all the voice work. If you've done voice work in the past, you know you never get it in one take. After it's all done, I send it back out for review and approval. The associate director simply doesn't respond. A week passes, the finance director takes an interest in why this module is almost a month overdue. I went to forward the associate director's email again, except now I cannot find it. Odd, seeing as how I have a hoarding problem when it comes to email. I checked with one of the subject matter experts I was working with. He can't find it either. Turns out none of us can find it. It's gone. So I checked with a friend of mine in IT who, after a little detective work, discovers that a week ago, someone did a compliance delete on the Exchange server. This basically is a seek and destroy for messages meeting certain criteria. In this case, a specific phrase she used in her email. I start digging through Outlook trying to find particular emails related to this that might be used to defend my actions. And they are all gone. Inbox, sent items, deleted items, every last one of them. Any email containing that particular phrase anywhere in it. This kind of thing is normally used by admins to mass delete spam or phishing emails from all users at once. Except in this case, someone apparently deleted emails that showed evidence of her awful decisions. My friend in IT can smell a juicy story a mile away and was very interested in seeing where this went. She recovered the deleted emails and I promptly saved them to a flash drive. For the next few days, every time I had any email with this associate director's name on it, even unrelated stuff, you never know how something might fit together, I saved a copy to the flash drive. I informed the subject matter experts to do the same. We started building our offline evidence locker. I didn't want to blow the lid on it just yet. I wanted to see if my suspicions were correct. Maybe a lifetime of watching spy movies and cop dramas had corrupted my thinking. Maybe there was another explanation. Who knows? It could happen. I don't know everything. I'll play defense. So after several weeks in total trying to appease this associate director's unquenchable thirst for irrelevant details and then getting ignored for a week, she finally publishes it and sends it to the finance director to approve so it can go live. Whew. Except the module, which was supposed to be a 30-minute online course, now contained 3 hours of content and went down several irrelevant rabbit holes that had been deemed critical supporting information. As an analogy, imagine designing a training module to teach a nurse how to enter some new CPT codes and being told you have to teach him how to read too, because he might not know what words are. That's how much nonsense was rammed into this thing. And the finance director, of course, hated it. I was surprised that such a rambling mess of a module would come from me, of all people. So he called a meeting with me and the associate director on Tuesday to get some answers. And sure enough, she immediately tried to distance herself from it. Tried to paint it as she made a couple suggestions and I clearly went way overboard. How I must have sent her a different version that she approved and switched them afterwards. That's not even possible. It would get thrown back into draft status. She kept trying to talk over me as I voiced my defense. And to his credit, the finance director finally just muted her so I could speak. And boy did I. I explained everything. I shared my screen, popped in my flash drive, and opened my copies of the emails that had supposedly been deleted. Every email exchange where she complained about the material, I pushed back, and she flat out ordered me to build a module in the way I did. She abruptly left the meeting and went offline. The finance director asked if I could send him a copy of all the relevant files, and as I did so, I told him they might not be there later, and then explained what I had learned about someone in IT using the compliance delete. He assures me he'll look into it, and the crap immediately hits the fan. The associate director never logged back on. There was a massive internal audit where people from her previous departments were asked to provide statements. Leadership tried to keep it hush-hush, but you just can't keep something that big under wraps. I don't know the specific what's and hows, but the associate director and one of the IT managers had both left the company to pursue the next stage of their careers, and we sincerely wish them the best. I don't really do the social media thing, but over the next few days, as a rumor mill did what rumor mills do, I heard their crap absolutely blew up. And it came out that the associate director and that IT manager were having an affair. Now, this all went down about a month ago, but as I wrote this post, I thought to check online court records. Both are now facing divorces filed by their respective spouses. So yeah, there is a void in my direct leadership, in IT's leadership, and the entire IT department is getting a shakedown by information security to determine if there were any other leaks. I spent some time reflecting on why this whole series of events happened, and my best guess is she wanted to make a grand entrance by spearheading this masterwork training module that covered every possible scenario and contained any and all the information anyone could possibly want. Then, as she started to realize how wasteful, rambling, and unnecessary it was, she realized that her grand entrance would be a grand face plant. So she tried to erase the evidence and pin all the nonsense on me to save face, but inadvertently set in motion the events that would expose her little arrangement with the IT manager.